Hey there, welcome to Trickle Down Therapy. My name is Sarah, aka Josie, aka JD, and today's topic is going to be a big one, breaking down your emotions into smaller, manageable pieces and learning to process them. Now I'm going to give it to you straight. This is something that many adults never master, and those adults tend to not teach it to their children in turn. The inability to do this is also a major symptom or agitator of many mental health issues. For instance, I am mostly recovered from borderline personality disorder, and people like me were never taught to process their emotions to a point that they became volatile with violent rapid mood swings, specifically because they don't know how to become okay with feeling something negative. So first, let me say to you this total cliche that everyone has heard, but no one really thinks about in the way that it needs to be thought about. It's okay not to be okay. People hear this line from influencers, musicians, people writing positivity sticky notes on the bathroom mirror in high school as if it's that simple to fix mental illnesses. You hear it and think, it's okay to have a bad day every now and then. And while that's true, that is vastly the wrong message that particular sentence should be sending. One interpretation is that you don't always have to try and change it when you don't feel good. This is true, but for people who consistently feel severely bad, it is ultimately useless. When you feel so bad every single day from whatever affliction it may be, it wears on you, and the desperation to get better only gets worse. I'll cover this issue a little bit more in another video though, because this isn't the point I'm trying to make at the moment. The much more important, in my mind, point that this statement is trying to make is you absolutely cannot and should not live your life trying to prevent bad feelings entirely. Something that I repeatedly told my therapist when I started treatment was that everything I did was in some effort to avoid guilt, embarrassment, or regret. I thought that was a really smart way to live, honestly. What I didn't realize at the time was that it not only made me an anxious, neurotic mess every moment of the day, but those feelings were so much worse when I did feel them because I was so determined to avoid them that I never let myself get used to them. It is normal and healthy to feel negative emotions. They may be negative, but that doesn't mean that they're bad. All of your emotions are trying to tell you something. Every one of them could be a learning experience if you accepted them for what they are, determined the cause of the emotion, which is important, and then made a plan to do better or be better the next time the situation arose. If you feel guilty for hurting someone, that's a chance to learn how to not hurt someone again. But it's also just a good indicator of your own moral boundaries and how much you care for that person. We're all going to hurt people every now and then. If you feel such overwhelming guilt that you shut down and openly hate yourself, that's not helpful to anyone. If a negative emotion tells you what you want or what you need to do better, you can use it productively and say, just apologize, genuinely and sincerely, without putting yourself down. These emotions are your friends. What happens when you accept that it's okay to feel negative emotions is that you can start processing them, which will make them feel not so bad anymore in a lot less time than if you refuse to accept they're happening. Honestly, if you won't let yourself process them, you're going to feel awful for a lot longer, possibly destroying interpersonal relationships along the way. I know I used to. But how do we learn to process? That really is the question for a lot of patients, and it's something that my therapist couldn't seem to answer for me because he's never had the problem I had where it didn't just come naturally during childhood. I had to figure this out flying blind. So I'm here to help you learn some more clearly defined strategies for understanding your own emotions. The biggest piece of advice I can give you is to break down your big scary emotions into specific bite-sized pieces. For example, let's say you were broken up with by someone you really loved. What word would you use to describe how that feels? For example purposes, I'm going to use a very broad word that I think a lot of people would use in this instance. Devastating. Sounds about right, right? It is so hard to get over feeling devastated. Because how do you even do that? By definition, the word means you are ruined. But the truth is, we're not ruined. The human mind is really very elastic. Another cliche you've heard is, time heals all wounds, right? Well, not really. Time to process your feelings heals all wounds, and it does take time. So you ask yourself, what does that mean, devastated? What am I feeling right now? Take out a sheet of paper if you want. When you feel a big emotion like devastation or hate or misery, make categories. Maybe if you were broken up with, you'd feel blindsided, stupid for feeling such love for someone who didn't love you the same way. Anger, sadness, loneliness. You can even break some of these down further. Do you feel lonely because you missed your ex, or do you feel lonely because you got used to doing things with someone else beside you? Both, maybe? You could feel jealousy if they've already moved on, but is that because you don't want someone else to have them, or because you don't want to be the only one hurting? Do you feel abandoned, betrayed, fooled maybe? Take as much time as you need, writing down as many feelings as you feel fit your emotion, and then break each of those down as small as they'll go. Get specific. Because once you know what little emotions you're feeling, you can deal with them individually instead of trying to cure one giant, gut-wrenching, insurmountable mega emotion all at once. Some parts of the emotion will get better faster than others. You could deal with the sadness or loneliness, but maybe the anger remains, for example. However, if you're trying to deal with devastation all as one emotion and you think that if the anger remains, that must mean all of it remains, you will convince yourself that you are not over it at all. My next piece of advice, which is greatly intertwined with the breaking down process, is to figure out why you feel each emotion. This may take some practice, especially if you've never lived in an environment where you felt encouraged or comfortable expressing negative emotions. If that's considered just plain old complaining in your family, you've probably had some miscommunication in relationships that could have been avoided if you just talked through your feelings and what made you feel that way. Again, feel free to write this down on paper or type it up in a notes app so that you feel less pressured to write down the perfect words for it on the first try. If you can't provide complete thoughts on it, just get as many words as you can down and just clean them up later when you get more comfortable with it. Once you start to understand why you feel emotions, you can reason with yourself and gain more control over your own mental state so as to prevent these feelings from wrecking your day. I want to stress that the point of controlling your mental state is never to keep from feeling these emotions, but to deal with them and express them healthily so that they can be comforted and moved on from. I know it can be hard to believe, but once you're able to healthily express your negative emotions, a lot of people are going to be a lot more understanding with you than if you'd shove the emotion down and let it erupt in a toxic way, which doesn't exactly incur sympathy or compassion from some people. My point is, you'll stop needing to feel afraid to say what you truly feel once you have some practice processing emotions, which actually snowballs the processing so that you only get better and better. My third piece of advice is that you need to be able to truly accept that these feelings are not going to last forever. Like I said, the human mind is very elastic. Even very serious emotions such as loss and grief won't ruin your life unless you let them. That doesn't mean it's easy or simple not to let them, but if you decide to put in the effort to be happy again, you can get there. It doesn't even always take that much effort to recover from negative emotions. Often what you really need to decide is to hang in there until it starts to get better again, and eventually the resilience of the human mind will do its thing, especially coupled with your newfound emotional processing skills. It is important that during this process you don't judge your own emotions too harshly. If you feel like what you're experiencing is stupid or unreasonable, that's just another version of pushing down your emotions. Not accepting them as they are means you will not be able to process them fully, and it will just frustrate you and probably cause unnecessary self-loathing, and it'll erupt in a really unhealthy way. Just because you accept that it's what you're feeling doesn't mean you have to take it out badly on other people. So if what you're afraid of is that you'll demand something you shouldn't of someone else, that fear doesn't have to come true and is definitely holding you back from feeling better. Don't worry, I'm going to cover communicating difficult feelings healthily in another video, so you don't have to figure it out all on your own. Sometimes when something explodes out of us the wrong way, it's something that we desperately need to talk about, and the only way to make any progress is to get through it. Holding back out of fear is only going to keep the problem going way longer than it needs to. This all may seem like very general advice if it doesn't come naturally to you. You may be thinking, yeah, I can try all that, but how do I actually get over the feelings once I can name them? Honestly, the answer is there is no template for getting over emotions that I or anyone can express to you in adequate words. 90% of the battle is figuring out what you feel and why you feel it. The rest will come naturally once you can do that, because once you know why something hurt you, you can make changes to prevent that from happening again, such as setting boundaries or reach out to someone who can comfort those specific emotions so that your mental state starts to heal. Talking your problems over with someone you trust is so much more productive once you can tell them exactly what's wrong instead of exploding in a blind rage. If you have any questions about this topic, feel free to leave a comment on this video or come chat with me on my Patreon at patreon.com/trickledowntherapy. Like I've said before, you're going to get access to all the same videos there that you will here, so it's not necessary, but appreciated. You can also leave a comment on this video if you think of another topic you'd like me to discuss, but bear in mind, I will only be covering topics I'm comfortable in my knowledge of. Thanks for watching. I hope it helps.